Hey,
Okay, we're actually here. Okay, let's begin our match. We're waiting on another match, but we're gonna be quickly hopping into a we have Beatty and what's the other person's name? I
beating
like
out the
three.
Jolteon.
And DHOKO. Doko. I'm gonna call him Doko. Let's go
Doko.
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 Doko. Doko. Okay, so we got Zamazenta versus Terapagos, which I believe is a very good matchup for the Zamazenta
Whoa.
because you do get that resist
Whoa.
on
Rock
the Terra
polish.
Starstorm. What?
Rock polish. Rock polish. Rock
Rock
polish to rock.
Polish Terapagos? I
Huh?
thought that was Calm Mind.
Huh? That was rock
Huh?
polish.
Huh?
And we have a fallen asleep towards towards a Grimmsnarl already. Oh,
Yep.
wait, hold on. The Sinister glasses kind of go hard. Holy. Wait,
Yeah,
that's
thanks in
awesome.
part to the Amoongus, now that Grimmsnarl is asleep. I believe we did see the Iron defense as we were moving into that match. So
Yeah.
now that Zamazenta does have the ability to really do some significant damage into the Tropicos. We don't have the confirmation on what Terra it is. I'll get for you in just a second. So if it does go for something like a Terra Grass, you could just bypass the Amoongus and then go right into the Terrapagos for free.
It's Terra Dragon.
Okay, so no bypassing Amoongus. We do see the Meteor Beam. It is going
Double
to be
rock.
charging up. Yeah, it's a very interesting set. So it's trying to get that stat boost to just
Power
bully
herb.
damage. Power Herb going to be activating. Does avoid, so that is a huge miss. You
Oof.
still get that attack boost, but now you don't get that extra damage.
Yeah, I mean, little bit unlucky there, and the sport's gonna put the doggy to sleep. There is it's not a cat nap, it's a dog nap. Very, very quickly, both Pokemon on the floor, on the bed, actually, just sleeping away. And now it's just kind of now up to to Doko to let the Terrapagos do its thing now. Amoonguss has done its job. It's still there to support. You still have full health of both your Pokemon. Terrapagos has both a +1 in speed, or a +2 in speed and a +1 in special attack. And regardless of what you have here to bring in, Terrapagos is going to do big damage to something here. Even if the prankster wakes up for a screen.
Yeah, and let's see. The Flutter Mane actually going to be switching onto the Amoonguss, trying to get that damage onto the opposing side of the board as soon as possible now that both Pokemon are asleep. So you could be dealing with 2-turn or 3-turn sleeps. The Terrapagos going to be going for that stellar terrestrialization into its ultimate form, going to be potentially going for those Terra Starstorms. We do see the Grimmsnarl going to be taking that second turn of sleep. Terra Starstorm going to be activating. It does have that +1 from that power herb that we saw in the last turn. It's going to be doing a decent chunk of damage to both Pokemon, and it actually doesn't do as much as you thought. So I believe screens might have been up from a previous turn, so it's eating that damage pretty well.
Yeah, even then you can see I think that's 40 HP towards Zamazenta. That's plenty of turns to turn this around, but that Fluttermane still is on the floor here. A Shadow Ball could do some massive damage here. Moonblast could do some massive damage here, just like this. Here it is. And actually, again, not really doing much. The screen seeming to be extremely helpful here. Zamazenta has been asleep for a couple of turns now, and it's still relatively going strong here, but it just can't wake up.
I don't know if you noticed, but it looks like that Zamazenta is actually quite slow. The Terrapagos has been able to move first in comparison to this Zamazenta. So now the Zamazenta is actually going to be taking a significant amount of damage in this next turn. It might get doubled up by a Moonblast and a Terra Starstorm once again. And unless the Grimmsnarl can wake up, it's potentially go for a Thunder Wave and get that connection to drop some speed. The Zamazenta is in a very interesting situation to get knocked out here.
Protected coming here from the Terrapagos to protect. It's going to protect itself from this Thunderwave, and there's the wake up that he's been waiting for, but unfortunately is going to block that with the protect. Next turn, he is up in the wind though. Icy Wind's going to come out, going to be missing on the dog.
Ooh.
There is no freezing here for that, but but down goes the speed for Grimmsnarl, but it's not going to matter too much. Up comes the dog finally. Heavy Slam coming out and taking out the Fluttermane with a one-hit KO. And just like that, potentially you could be seeing the comeback.
Yeah, this is a great situation if you are Zamazenta, recognizing that you do not have to go into that Terapagos with the body press at +4, potentially getting that one-hit KO. Instead, you want to get rid of that Flutter Mane, which is a huge problem for your team. Now that the Terapagos has used Protect, it cannot use Protect again safely. So now it is even more susceptible to those Thunder Waves that we saw the previous turn. Not to mention, obviously, there's a Mugus still on the floor, but if you do still get to use that Thunder Wave, it could get redirected, and now you have the Amoonguss stuck with paralysis.
And there is the Rage Powder in there. I think that's going to tank that paralysis just like you called right there. And here it comes. Bzz, 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 and the slowest Pokemon on the floor gets a little bit slower. And that nice little chance to paralyze for the next turn. Terra Starstorm coming out, potentially knocking out this Grimmsnarl now, unless the screens are still up, because it did not take that much damage from it. There it comes. There's the hit. And there it goes. Grimmsnarl going down now. But it definitely did its job. It got the Amoonguss into a position where its Rage Powder is now not necessarily as dangerous as it was because of the chance of paralysis.
Yeah, so we are going to be seeing an Amoonguss on Speedy side going to be switching in. So it's definitely important to note that now that the Amoonguss is on the field, the opposing Amoonguss cannot redirect any move with Rage Powder because Amoonguss itself is a grass type. So that if you decide to go for Spore into the opposing Terapagos, it will more than likely get slept unless it wants to switch out or just protect for that turn, which doesn't really advance your game state. So now you have to deal with the situation that if you do want to attack, you're more than likely not going to be getting a one hit KO onto this Amoonguss. You're going to have to deal with that sleep. The opposing Amoonguss on Doko's side is going to be hit by the full turn paralysis. Terrastar Storm going to be shooting into both Pokemon. Does the dog survive? It just barely does.
Oof.
The Zamazenta hanging on just barely. Body press into the Terapagos
Whoa.
because it did not get that Rage Powder redirection is going to be getting the one hit KO.
And not to mention, after picking up this one hit KO, his side's of Mungus is going to pollen, puff, puff, puff towards the dog, get that HP back up to a great, great number, and you are just in the driver's seat now. No matter what comes in, because you've already dealt with the Flutter Mane, nothing else on Doko's team resists this big body press that's coming out, and he's going to terrasilize into Dragon to avoid the heavy crits from this Urshifu, while now you just kind of let the Amoonguss be Amoonguss.
Yep, because the Urshifu does bypass those defense boosts with that surging strikes, you do have to think about it. Oh, I have to be able to minimize the damage. And that's where that Terra Dragon comes in. Because of the resist on Dragon, you're actually not going to be taking that much more damage, even if you were getting hit by that surging strikes. It does decide to go for a protect. It looks like it's just trying to scout out a detect on the Urshifu side, going for the Rage Powder here to just try to redirect any surging strikes if it were to go for one. And the Spore does come out, has to go into this Zamazenta that went in for protect. So now you're in a situation where you could go for body press into Urshifu, try and hope that you get another full turn paralysis, get that KO onto Urshifu, and then win the game here.
I mean, even so, body press will do a decent amount of damage into Amoonguss as well. And again, the paralysis is still there, still prominent, still a chance of not moving at all. And this Urshifu is going to go down the moment body press lands. Not to mention, if you just wanted a Rage Powder and take the damage, have your Rocky Helmet hit this Urshifu for a bunch of chip damage, it's going to go somewhere. But it does not matter that the Focus Sash is going to let this Urshifu survive here. But it is a really bad position here for Doko right now.
Yep, and here comes the surging strikes. It is not doing all that much damage, even with the critical hits because of that resist on the Terra Dragon type. And now let's see who moves first. It should be the Samungus getting to move. It is going to be the Pollen Puff picking off that 1 HP Urshifu that went down to its focus sash. And now the lone paralyzed Amoonguss on the other side has to go for the Spore since it did not go for Rage Powder earlier on, like we saw. And now you have a incredible position where you can just go for side Pollen Puff and Body Press for the rest of the game, and that should clean you up game one.
Yeah, there is not enough damage to even come close to beating out this Zamazenta, who then reverts to regular dog form after the fourth Very, very well done there, especially because a lot of people do get scared once their Pokemon get status like that. Double sleep on on your team is kind of that situation where you look at your members and go, "Oh man, I can't do anything." Switch. And that's what a lot of people want to punish. And it was very, very smart to just keep your Zamazenta in, especially taking little to no damage from those Terra Starstorms, even with a +1 Terrapagos and just waiting it out and being able to take those KOs very, very nicely.
And it's an interesting situation where you have this Amoonguss matchup, right? The both Amoonguss can't spore each other, and they can both just use spore into their partners. So it kind of comes down to, are you going to rage powder to just try to avoid the attacks? Or are you going to be playing aggressive and go for those spores? Where if you do hit those spores and you get those turn 2 or turn 3 sleeps, it's very detrimental for your team, especially in a matchup where it's so tough to gain that advantage. You're playing very defensive with the Zamazenta. You're playing pretty slow with this Terrapagos, trying to set it up with those rock polishes, trying to set it up with those power herbs. It's not a great situation. So it's really who comes out on top in the end.
I mean, Zamazenta is one of my favorite Pokemon to use in this format as well. Like both like the setup and the ability to cover teammates is super super interesting, but it looks like that this one is heavily based on doing that extra damage with body press and having that that little bit of heavy slam damage in the background. And just like that, we are going to transition into this next game over here. I believe Speedy up 1-0. If I
Yep.
remember the right sides,
Speedy is
cool.
up 1-0. We are on Speedy's POV, and let's see the leads. It is going to be a similar lead as game number one. It's actually going to be an exact mirror of game number one, the Amoonguss and the Terrapagos versus the Zamazenta and the Grimmsnarl back at it for both players.
Terra Shift is on deck. The turtle sprouts some extra little fun little things in the back. Dauntless Shield getting activated. The nerf on Dauntless Shield does not. I think the nerf on Dauntless Shield really affects Dauntless Shield and the sword ability for Zacian really affects Zacian more than it does Zamazenta, especially because you don't necessarily have to switch out to get all the value from these Pokemon. At least for Zamazenta, you get that extra body press damage. You have a little bit more survivability. The extra attack boost is nice, but if you have to switch out, it's you're not getting anywhere with it. And just like that, light screen goes back up just as it did in the game one. Iron defense going down again as it did in game one. Potentially seeing the exact same opening turn here, Gerd.
Yep. Meteor Beam is actually going to be chosen instead of that Rock Polish, trying to get that special attack damage increase sooner rather than later. And it looks like we're going to be seeing the Power Herb getting that extra turn of usage, going to be firing off the Meteor Beam into this Grimmsnarl, just doing about
Wow.
33%. And the Spore this time, originally in gamer number one, it had went into that Grimmsnarl first, and now it is going into that Zamazenta, who had already used a move this turn. So on this next turn, it is going to be taking its first guaranteed turn of sleep. So let's see what this Terrapagos is going to do while the dog is taking a nap.
I mean, screens. I think screens are still criminally underrated in Scarlet and Violet. The idea of using them in Sword and Shield, especially during like those last couple of rule sets in the competitive scene, really established Grimmsnarl as one of the Pokemon to bring. But since the transition here, it has seemingly not fallen off, but seemingly feels a little bit more disrespected. But at oh,
Oh no, we see a disconnect. So we'll have to
ooh,
get confirmation from our organizers and judges to see what is going to be the ruling that is just after turn one. So that is a little too deep to potentially go for something like a uh rematch, but we'll have to see again how the organizers are going to be playing this out. That is very rare situation, especially online. And sometimes at regionals, disconnects are fairly common because of the hardware that we use, and just like sometimes, like with all the network interference that's going on, there's just a lot of disconnects. But online, typically you don't see it that often unless there's some sort of like Wi-Fi disconnect with your home Wi-Fi, or maybe you move your Switch the wrong way because sometimes it can be a little bit finicky at home. So we'll see if we have another match to stream, or if we're just going to wait for a confirmation on what is going to be happening with that match.
I mean, I'll take the opportunity to talk a little bit more about like my idea on screens as well, because
Yep.
again, because screens haven't necessarily fallen off as a quality, but I definitely would say there's less quantity of it, and you can see a bunch of times throughout. There's always some team that runs screens doing very very well in regionals and in worlds as well, and Scarlet and Violet so far, and they work so well because there isn't especially right now, there's not really much of a reason to run any of the screen breaking moves. Psychic Fangs is almost more prominent than Brick Break or anything else that does that. Raging Bull is almost like the most prominent one, and nobody really runs those Tauroses at the moment. So screens, I think, potentially could see like a big increase, especially as you saw like how little damage that Terra Starstorm did in those games.
Yeah, you don't really often see you do see some of the Tauros. It's not as common as it was towards the end of Regulation A, where it does have the ability to break through screens. And then Psychic Fangs isn't really used on many of the Pokemon that are currently in the format. We did see the Metagross with Psychic Fangs earlier on in this tournament, but that's not really a common situation to run it on. And then Brick Break, you typically don't run it unless you're like Dusclops with Blood Moon or Salina with Weakness Policy, which it's definitely still a thing, but it's obviously not like super meta defining. So
Mhm.
screens pretty much get to play the rest of this match. Also, don't have like anything with like defog getting rid of screens, and you don't
Yeah.
have like court chain. So there are a lot of ways to play around screens, but all the ways to play around screens either are too niche to be viable or just generally uncommon in the meta where all the top Pokemon are really using them.
Yeah, exactly. I genuinely the whole thing about where certain Pokemon get the signature move of other Pokemon, I need that to happen for Court Change, because I actually
Huh.
think Court Change as a move is really really good, but Cinderace is a terrible Pokemon for competitive.
Whoa,
It
whoa,
is,
whoa, whoa. Do
sorry,
not
terrible
don't
in
say that. There
doubles.
are certain
Terrible in
people
doubles.
that will say that Pokemon is broken in singles. Obviously, in doubles, it is not as viable as what it would be in singles. But one can hope. Court change is
Yeah.
just not as good in doubles because just the fast paced environment of the match just gets double targeted. It's too frail. Doesn't really do enough damage. Powerball can miss. It's just not as good as an option. But
Oh, not to mention like a weird speed tier too, where like
yeah.
it's faster than the average Pokemon, but not faster than every like all of like the fastest Pokemon in the meta. Because I think it's like what, like 109 if I remember correctly is like its speed stat.
I don't know the
119.
exact amount, but it definitely is. I would assume it's above like base 100, so
It's
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 definitely on
one
the
it's
speedier end.
119.
Okay, I mean that's pretty fast, but it's only really fast in non-restricted formats. So if you're playing in a non-restricted format, but you also have to consider if you're in a non-restricted format, Dragapult's also legal and it's hitting faster than Cinderace is, so it's very tough to deal with. And also you have things like Talonflame as well.
Yeah. Talonflame is a I feel bad for Talonflame because every single time these restricted formats come around, Talonflame's usage just explode. It's just gone. It's one of like the biggest losers of power creep.
Yeah, Talonflame is still viable. It's won regionals even in Scarlet and Violet's era. It's just with different tailwind setters, especially in this format. The more common ones are Whimsicott being one of the more notable ones, and you obviously had Murkrow being a menace early on in the format of
Oh
Regulation A,
God, I don't want to think
where
about that.
Murkrow Goldango was a core. Murkrow would shut off Dondozo when Dondozo started to really pop up in popularity, where it's like, oh, you have to watch out for these Omni boosts, and Haze was just a really good way to shut it down. Talonflame still has potential because it's a really good way to use taunt that isn't technically on Prankster, but it's just so fast that it normally will outspeed most things. And then you still have fast Tailwind, even if you don't get the priority. Priority Brave Bird is still one of the strongest moves in the game in terms of its viability and its just damage output. And then Flare Blitz is pretty nice. I know people have been teching on dual wing beat, but it isn't very strong, but people
Mm,
believe in it, so it's just like one way or the other. You gotta deal with it.
yeah, the two hits are always like a weird thing because it's like if you hit something that's like really weak to flying, and they have sash, you break sash and are able to do that. But well,
Okay.
we'll stop talking about this garbage, and we will. So unfortunately, because the disconnection was on Doko's end. It's going to be a game loss for him. It's Speedy, not the Jolteon, is going to take a 2-0 win in the set. However, we are going to bring one more game to you so we can at least watch and talk through another high level match. And both of them are on board and are willing and able to pull this out. So big thank you to the both of them. Big shout out to the both of them, because I know that sometimes, especially with the current rules and how it has to be, those kind of things can be super frustrating.
Yeah, when you're playing in a game where the netcode viability is also kind of wishy-washy sometimes, the disconnects just happen. So you've got to have some sort of ruling in that situation. That's just how the die rolls at some of these events where if there is a disconnect, especially mid-game, there's really no way to restart the game at where it was. In like TCG games, you can sometimes just back up in your sequencing and then be able to play it out from there. But unfortunately, we play the video game. There's really no rewind button. So
Mhm.
that's just kind of how we have to deal with that. Thank you to Michael and all the other organizers and judges that were able to help out to the situation, that were able to get that resolved. And we'll still have a match for this round before we move on to our next round in
Okay, so
the round
chat
number four.
chat chat sees me looking at my screen like the way that I am, because I'm trying to read what the name of Jolteon's, or not the Jolteon's, Grimmsnarl is, because it looks like it's like the square root of like 1/4 plus omega or something, and I think it's really, really funny. But we're gonna get into this game. The exhibition match between these two players is gonna be going on instead. But Speedy, and we've got Doko in here once more. The Sinistry glasses still rocking on that face, and I think we're gonna see we see the exact same leads. All right, so it's damage equals a square root of 1/4.
Plus,
I think it's I think it's plus omega.
no, I don't think that's Omega.
No, that's not omega. You're right. What is that? Is this just supposed to be a 0?
No,
Hold on.
there's a name for it. I'm not that too knowledgeable on my math terms. Got to hit a butter dog, you know.
Well,
So,
I'm pull
um,
up the New England Smash.
literally. So we are seeing the same leads as game number two and technically game number one. I assume they're just going to go down the same path that they were. So you go for meteor beam, iron defense, spore, and then maybe try to go down the same path. Let's see what actually would have happened if we were to play that match. So we do see the meteor beam going to be hitting presumably into the Grimmsnarl again. If it does connect, sometimes it does miss. It's 90% accurate.
Michael's saying that it's the fraction for light screen, probably. That's pretty funny. But there is the meteor beam hitting into that Grimmsnarl again. Spore hitting onto the Zamazenta again. I think we just went through the same exact turn as we went the game that we just disconnected as
Yep,
well.
it just a little gentleman's agreement to just play out the turn as it was. The only caveat is that you did have to hit that meteor beam a second time, but still got odds to get those hits. So let's see what the actual turn order was going to play out. We do see the rage powder on this Amoonguss going to be firing off. So any trying to go for an attack. So the Thunder Wave does miss.
Ooh.
That might have been a different situation in the actual game. We do see the guaranteed turn of sleep coming through, and a meteor beam. Wait, again?
Yeah,
What?
I mean, as like you saw in the last couple of games, the light screen doing this much reduction for the Terrapagos is something that has been a problem. So it looks like that Doko is going to start charging up those extra turns for Meteor Beam to get more damage in here, and that Amoonguss is just going to keep doing Rage Powder to keep taking the Thunder Wave straight to the face, as it has in the previous games as well. And while it does that, you get another turn of Meteor Beam. But
Ooh.
unfortunately, the dog is going to wake up, and Iron Defense drops once more up to another boot. Another double boost into that Iron Defense, and Meteor Beam is not going to be doing enough damage to take this Oko yet, but it does do a lot more than the last turn.
Yeah, the Rage Powder on the Amoonguss was still a smart play. You kind of want to bank on another Thunder Wave miss, and on the fact that because the Zamazenta did wake up, it did fire off another Iron Defense. If it did end up going for Body Press into that Terrapagos, it would have done a pretty good chunk of damage, even through that Terra Shell ability, causing a natural resist on that first turn of attack. So now that +2 because of the Meteor Beam, actually Did the meteor beam fire off yet, or?
It hit the Grimmsnarl in the second in that turn, and that's why Grimmsnarl is at about like a sixth health remaining at the current moment. But
Yep.
it is going to get more value by putting up that reflect just in case a switch comes in. And there goes the body press on Terra Shell. Oh, actually, Terra Shell is going to save it for now, but it still does over half damage.
Yep, and there's Terra Starstorm in its base form. It's going to be hitting into the Grimmsnarl, picking it off and getting that KO. Zamazenta still staying up on the field for now, but it does not look good. It's going to be taking that nap once again. It is already used an attack from the body press, so now is going to be taking its guaranteed turn of sleep on this next turn.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a rough situation to be in, but but it is a lot better than the last one because I believe there is still screens up. It's still going to be a little bit more reduced damage for Terrapagos, but you have a good opportunity to get a Pollen Puff back onto your turtle, get Terra Shell back on, so Body Press doesn't one shot you like it does if Terra Shell is not active. And just like that, as I say it, the Terra Shell is no longer in play, but Starstorm is now up. There's going to be that extra damage incoming for being a stellar type move. Spores going into it, and I assume this is probably going to be a pollen puff here from that Amogus, or actually, yeah, probably going to be a pollen puff into it to get more damage or to get that health back as the Starstorms hit, doing not a ton of damage to either of those Pokemon.
Oh, and look at that. The Clear Smog is going to be tacking on a little bit of damage, but more importantly, that special attack increases are now going to be nullified, bringing it down to neutral. But more importantly, on the opposing side, you do have that Pollen Puff connecting into the Terapagos, bringing it back up to almost near full HP. So it's going to be potentially surviving another attack. But you have to remember this dog, the Zamazenta, is at +4 defense on a body press that is on stab. It could be picking up the one-hit KO through this terrestrialized Terrapagos.
Yeah, I mean, like this is partly why a lot of the more prominent and I guess more basic Terrapagos sets run Earth Power because the the pressure of a ground move is extremely better than the pressure of a rock move. As much as rock actually is a pretty good offensive type, the ability to at least at this point force a Terra or get the dog off the field is super important because this Amoonguss is not going anywhere and the dog is still surviving pretty heavily right now.
And there goes another Pollen Puff. This time it's going to be on Speedy's side, bringing up that HP all the way back up to full. And now this damage trades are just disappearing. Only the damage is really going on to these Amoonguss. And you have to still think about the fact that the opposing Amoonguss is paralyzed. So at some point, law of averages is going to say at some point the Amoonguss is going to be taking that full turn of paralysis. So more often than not, this Zamazenta is probably going to be hitting a move into this Terrapagos for super effective damage soon enough.
There's the protect out right there for Terrapagos, trying to avoid as much damage as possible. The dog potentially waking up and just like that, saying good morning right there, trying to body press into it. There is no Terra Shell, so we'll be taking full super effective damage now on the +4 stat as well. Pollen Puff going over towards Amoonguss, not doing a ton of damage because Amoonguss is Amoonguss, but we do have finally, as the law of averages say, a paralysis finally hitting right there. And now we could potentially be seeing a Terrapagos going down if another paralysis occurs.
Yep, I believe it is now past the guaranteed turn of sleep for the Zamazenta, so it has a chance to wake up in this turn. We are going to be seeing a switch out into this
Oh no, it's
Urshifu.
awake.
Oh, it is awake. Oh, my
Yeah,
mistake. I thought it was.
it just hit protect last turn, so it didn't do anything.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
So
yep.
we do see the Shanpao going to be switching in. So now, because of its ability to sort of ruin, is going to be decreasing the defense stats of all Pokemon other than itself on the field. Obviously, with that Urshifu, is going to be picking up the one hit KO, but it doesn't matter because you have that Focus Sash bringing it and surviving at 1 HP. And guess who's taking another midday nap? The Zamazenta going night for a
This
third
is
time in this
a
match.
it's a sleepy puppy. He just wants to curl up at your feet. Let him sleep, man. But that is like it's just how like it's just a rotation of it really. Zamazenta is going to boost up, fall asleep, boost up, fall asleep, hit body press, fall asleep, and it is just endless at the current moment.
Yeah, you pretty much have to just bank on the fact that you can finally get out of that paralysis or not paralysis, out of the sleep, actually wake up, do some meaningful damage before you get slept again. Because your main attacking move is body press, it's actually resist onto that poison type Amoonguss. So really, your only good way to attack the Amoonguss is heavy slam, which can do a decent amount of damage, but it's not based on your defense stat like body presses, so it's not really doing all that much damage. And you have to consider switching with Urshifu too, which is a resist on a water type. So a very tough situation. You kind of just have to find a way to break through this Amoonguss wall.
And Terapagos is being brought back in here to try to get something out of something. But again, if Terra Shift is not active, this Terapagos will explode to the body press. Just got to depend on the pupper waking up. Rage Powder getting active again, trying to tank another one of these body press. Dog remains asleep while Terapagos gets up a Terra Star Storm once again. Still do not think it's going to do as much damage as it previously has, or as we've previously seen before. Amoonguss still tanking so much damage and putting Terapagos to sleep just like that once again.
Yeah, as this match moves on, you have to consider the PP that's on this Terapagos. Terrastar Storm at maximum usage can use up to 8 times. I believe this is the third time it has been used. So presumably, if it is maximum output Terra Starstorm, it has 5 more attempts. But in this long, drawn out game, that is going to matter because this Amoonguss is just constantly staying in the field. You can keep healing up the Zamazenta at some point. We actually haven't seen this Flutter Mane yet that's actually going to be switching on this Pokemon. If the Zamazenta tried to go for a body press into this Flutter Mane, it's not going to work. But look at the damage on body press
Wow.
onto Amoonguss, even through a resist
Oh, it was a
with the
crit.
critical hit, actually is going to matter.
Whew.
So this Amoonguss could be going down very, very soon.
Yeah, and then the pollen puff coming back out just to give the doggy a little bit more health in there, and then Spore puts it right back to sleep. We're
Yep.
back
So
again.
just as it wakes up, it's going to take some more allergy pills and it's going to go right back to bed.
Somebody has dosed the dog, and we're back. We're back at square one. The heavy slam would be coming out if the dog awakes on turn one, but methinks not. And looks like we're just seeing the debate of Pollen Puff versus the Clear Smog in there to try to take out this Amoonguss. I believe it will not. I believe it would have if Amoonguss had stayed in, but in coming the Urshifu to tank that damage. Urshifu's going to go down, and we're going to have a clean switch into most likely Terapagos again, with the Icy Wind coming out right there from the Flutter Mane. Not a ton of need for speed control because Flutter Mane just completely outspeeds the entirety of the Jolteon's team, or not the Jolteon's team right here, but it's some pretty good damage on that Amoonguss.
Yeah, and we do see the Palm Puff going to be picking off that Urshifu. The Amoonguss that was originally on the field probably would have gotten KO'd from the Palm Puff in that range that it was at before it had switched out. And obviously trying to get rid of that Urshifu, because now you get this free switch into Terapagos. Mind you, this Terapagos has been put to sleep, and I do not believe it has taken its guaranteed turn of sleep yet. So now that this Terapagos is on the field, you have to kind of let it try to use an attack to get out of the sleep, but also be careful because you could also just get hit by a body press.
Yeah, the dog's been asleep for a couple of turns now. So the more sleep you see, the more likely you're going to wake up in this turn. The dog getting hit by another one of these nice little icy winds over here probably is now slower than the Terapagos, but Terapagos also getting that guaranteed turn of sleep in here. The dog is also still asleep. The decreasing, actually, my fault. I said earlier the decreasing of the icy wind was probably not necessary. Absolutely was, because Terapagos now finally outspeeds the Zamazenta. Probably need now that Purple Haze down here, the Amoonguss, has to try to support a little bit better because Terapagos now hits first.
Look at this board state. You have 3 Pokemon asleep, and the only Pokemon that cannot be put to sleep is the one that has been putting everything to sleep. All the allergies have been spreading around, and now the Amoonguss finally off the field for what seems like many, many turns. Champao going to be switching in, taking a nice break. Sword of Ruin is going to be activating, weakening every Pokemon's defenses. The Protect actually going to be used this time around. No Terrastar Storm, maybe just trying to protect itself from a potential attack from this Zamazenta, sleep onto the Fluttermane, and the Zamazenta also going to be taking another turn of sleep. So we're still fighting through these turns.
We have a sleepy pupper alert over here, but this heavy slam is going to hit at some point over here. But see, Chain Pow now has an opportunity to do a little bit of extra damage, obviously, with Sword of Ruin finally on the field over here. The switch out from Terapagos going does not want to take any of that chance of getting hit by the body press, but unfortunately, there is a heavy slam in the other direction incoming. Granted that this guy wakes up in this turn, Fluttermane most likely staying asleep in this turn. There he goes again, and this surely has to end. It is the wake up from the dog with the heavy slam onto that, takes that Oko right there, and Fluttermane drops as as it is super super weak. That steel type heavy slam.
Yep. And now the Amogus being able to switch in does give that potential support. You're now basically back where we were many, many, many turns ago, where the Amogus pretty much has to go for those rage powders to try to keep the Tropicals alive from those potential body presses. The Tropicals is going to be faster than this Zamazenta though, because of those previous icy winds that the Fluttermane used before it had gone knocked out. So the Tropicos is able to get some damage in, but we got to remember in the first two games that we've played so far, those Tropicos Pterosaur Storms have not been doing that much damage. Screens has been gone for quite a long time already. So even without the screens, the damage output is pretty lacking on Tropicos' side.
Yeah, I mean, you only have to wonder how much special defensive investment you have on the Zamazenta, because you don't necessarily need to worry too hard about that defensive pressure because you get that boost at the beginning of your switch. And this Zamazenta also has not switched out this entire game so far. There's the Ice Spitter to take that final hit on the Amoonguss, and if as long as there's no complete jank here, this body press should do enough damage to take out this Terapagos in one hit. Oh, my fault. I forgot he protected. But the next turn, it's over.
Yep, the Urshifu had gone down earlier from the Pollen Puff. We just saw the Amoonguss go down. Fluttermane got knocked out from Heavy Slam. Protect on the Chanpao, just trying to preserve its Focus Sash and get some extra damage in with that Sword of Ruin ability with the body press calculations. Pterosaur Storm going to be coming through, trying to get some damage as much as possible, but I don't think it's going to matter in the end whatsoever. It's only going to take about 25%. Body press is going to be locking into that Terapagos, getting that one hit KO from that range, and now Speedy winning that small exhibition match.
Yeah, I mean, just very, very well done from Speedy. Both the again, like I talked about the beginning of that, and I talked about the beginning of game one where it just like he was able to just and there wasn't as much of a threat towards it, especially if you just kept it in. You got your boosts up, so defensively you're solid. It was clear that there was a lot of special defensive investment in that, and then the screens doing the job that it needed to do before going down, keeping that Zamazenta alive until Amoonguss could come in and clean up with that support.
Yep, and that was such a good match. There are only a few more matches left, two more matches left in round three. That was a really long match. We obviously did unfortunately see a disconnected game number two in this match, but we were able to see a small exhibition match of what could have been in this match. It was going to eventually be a 2-0 win for Speedy due to the disconnect, but once again, we appreciate the organizers and judges to be able to resolve that situation, and friendly enough for Doko and for Speedy to play a match for us while we were waiting for everyone else. So before we head off into round number four, let's talk about our sponsors again. We're talking about our primary reason we're running this event. We got Toys for Tots, great organization to give toys for kids who need them, especially all the young ones. We have a $380 saved up right now in the bank. We want to get that $400 goal. Let's see if we can reach it.
Also, don't forget to check out Glitch and Space Panda, sponsors of the WD Michael stream. We've got a button for on the Glitch side, got the best energy formula for gamers that is also the healthiest as possible. Founder Benjamin Bullington took great time in finding clean energy drinks, no artificial flavors or sweeteners. So you can check them out with the exclamation point over there. And Space Panda doing some mouth-watering cosmic flavors for the best gummies out there. So check them out by exclamation pointing either of them up there, over here, over there. Oh my god, I forget which
Yeah,
direction I have to point.
it's always reversed. It's always one of the toughest things. Always, always.
But again, if you guys have not right now, please hit the exclamation point donate exclamation point charity and look at the Toys for Tots page. I haven't checked it since I checked them last time, so I'm gonna go over there and quickly check it myself again. Still on the $380 mark right now. We've passed the $300 goal. There is a $400 current goal. So if you guys can get any of the word out there, please, please, please get the word out. If you can donate, donate. If you can't, say something to some other people. Let people know what's going on. Then hit up Toys for Tots as soon as possible.
Yep. And with that being said, let's move on to our round 4 break. We'll see you guys on the other side. Don't go anywhere. We'll have a whole new set of players to watch in this exciting tournament. So stay tuned.